Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We know that air masses are named based on how they qualify: warm, cold, wet, or dry. So the four qualifications or criteria. But let's talk about how they are truly formed. Where are they born, so to speak? If it's a warm area, then it must have been created in a space of the earth that gets a lot of direct sunlight. And we know those to be the more tropical regions, the places around the equator. Of course, if it's a cooler air mass, then it's probably one that was created at the poles, North Pole, South Pole. With the less direct light from the sun, those areas are much colder. So it makes sense that the air around them would also be cooler. We also talk about the humidity level, or wet versus dry. Well, if the air mass is created over a land area, then it's most likely to be dry. But if it's made over an ocean or a wet water source, then it's most likely to be wet. In this case, we introduce some new vocabulary by talking about wet as maritime. Maritime, the base or root word is mari, as in marine. My students tell me they want to be marine biologists, but you have to learn that marine means wet or of the ocean, of the sea, and a biologist, bio, life, logi or ology, study of. So a marine biologist is going to study ocean life, sea life. In this case, maritime means that it's something formed over a sea or a water base, and therefore it's more likely to be very humid, very wet, very moist. And of course, the term that we're using for something created over land might be a little more familiar. That's continental. Just like we would say we're part of the North American continent, right? That's a large mass of land. So the air above our continent would be considered dry and therefore continental. So if you were going to qualify or name these, you should be able to drag and drop, figuring out, using our fancy new vocabulary, what we should call each air mass. Now let's pretend for a moment that this was created over the equator. It's going to be warmer, right? But if it's created over the equator and over an ocean area, it's going to be both warm and wet or moist. So that's probably something we would call a maritime tropical. Now, it doesn't really matter if you say maritime tropical or tropical maritime. That's a little bit more negotiable. The next one, of course, is maritime polar. So formed over an ocean or water, and then, of course, from the polar regions, an area that's much cooler or colder, less heat energy. The third option that we have is something formed in a warm area, tropical, but also over land, continental. Again, continental and tropical. You could say tropical continental, it would work the same way. The last option should be pretty obvious by now. We've already used tropical, wet and dry. We used polar, wet, so now we need to use continental or polar dry, right? Made over land, so it's going to be dry. Made over the pole, so it's going to be cooler. Let's stop there and see if we can answer some questions.